It's not a good day for fisherman Lalit Kumar. The wind is too strong to head out to sea. It's the second day in a row. A few more days like this and he'll no longer be able to feed his family. Since the tsunami 10 years ago, he says, his family has had to live from hand to mouth.
Oh, yeah, okay. Was also damaged.
When the tsunami came, I was at home with the children, he says. I didn't know what was happening. The wave washed right over our house. I tried to hold on to my children, but I couldn't. The water dragged me away. I thought, now we're all going to die. December 26, 2004. A powerful earthquake under the Indian Ocean triggered a tsunami wave that bore down without warning on coastlines across Southeast Asia. In Sri Lanka alone, 38,000 people lost their lives. The country's pristine beaches were strewn with rubble. Our house was destroyed and the boat was gone, he says. Fortunately, I eventually found my children alive and later my wife too. My father didn't make it. They initially sought refuge in a local temple and later they lived in a makeshift hut. 2 years after the tsunami, the family was given a house further inland and a moped too, all financed by donations. Lalit takes me to his home. He lives in a settlement made up of 500 houses built by a Chinese aid organization. Most of the people who live here are fishermen, just like himself. The house is small but adequate. He shares it with his wife, Roshini, and their 2 children. They are all grateful for the help they received back then, but Roshini misses her old house in the village, her old neighbors, and the modest prosperity that they had built up for themselves. As she tells me about her experiences, she begins to cry. If I'm honest, she says, I live in fear every day that there'll be another tsunami. I still have nightmares. The tsunami destroyed us, our home, our family. I saw so many dead people, so much suffering. I nearly died myself. I just can't get the images out of my mind. No one here received any counselling or psychological help after the tsunami. Her daughter Umesha was 8 years old when the tsunami hit. In her room, she's working on a presentation for school. She wants to warn people about the dangers of a tsunami. After all, I experienced it myself, she says. Then she doesn't want to say any more. Instead, she prefers to focus on her greatest passion. She'd like to go to dance school when she's older and perform professionally. But her father would prefer her to get a job in the tourism industry, the economic motor in Sri Lanka. Lalit takes me to the place where his house once stood. He sold the land shortly after the tsunami hit. Here you can see the change that has taken place in our country, he says. Nearly all the fishermen who used to live here are now living inland, he says. Since the tsunami, there are now only hotels and bars for foreigners here on the beach. All the fishermen are gone. Many people see this as a side effect of the tsunami. That's something I hear again and again while traveling around Sri Lanka. They say government used the reconstruction to introduce a fundamental change, resettling all the fishermen inland while massively promoting tourism along the coast. New hotels are now springing up everywhere. This year, 3 times as many tourists came to Sri Lanka as in the years before the tsunami. I'm going to visit a disaster management centre in the city of Galle. It's one of 24 centres that were set up with international aid following the tsunami. Staff here have developed alarm systems and evacuation plans. At least once a year, they organise a drill to practice what to do in an emergency. All things that have only developed since the tsunami. Coordinator Kubiya Pradeep explains the plans for protecting the local population in the event of a disaster. This office is manned 24 hours a day, he says. If we get a warning of a threat from our head office in Colombo, we raise the alarm. Members of the military and police force also drive around with loudspeakers to warn people. So I think we really are better prepared now. He takes me to see one of the new alarm towers. These make up the heart of Sri Lanka's early warning system. Masts like this one are positioned every 10 kilometers along the coast. Pradeep says the sirens can be heard for miles around. The loudspeakers on top of the mast also allow staff to provide local people with important information. The children are excited about our visit. They too were involved in the annual drill in October. We always announce the drills in advance, Pradeep says. Otherwise, people would panic when they hear the alarm. We hand out leaflets showing the escape routes. Everyone needs to know the shortest route to the safety zones. All over the city, I find information signs giving directions to the nearest rescue area. They too were financed by donations. Altogether, Sri Lanka received some 2.5 billion euros after the tsunami. I want to know more about what happened to that aid. So I'm heading to one of the largest projects in the southwest of the country. Buddhist monk Sadhu Ahongal Wimaladama is in charge of a village that was rebuilt directly after the tsunami. It all began with 50 houses for families who had been left homeless. It wasn't easy at the beginning, he says. We had money but no time. People needed a roof over their heads fast. We all worked hard. 1 year later, a school was built along with workshops for training in practical trades and 2 orphanages. Many children lost their parents in the tsunami. "200 children attend the school, which is now open to all the children in the village. They learn writing and maths in English. They're only in the 4th grade, but these children already know what they want to do when they grow up.
I want to be a doctor and teacher. I want to be a policeman.
What started out as emergency aid has now become a long-term commitment, says Elfriede Zeus, who is financing the project through her charity, Future for Children. A retired bookkeeper from Germany, she still comes here several times a year. She needs 120,000 euros a year to keep everything here running. She wants the help to continue, but 10 years after the tsunami, raising enough money is difficult. She says many other projects have already had to close as a result. Orphanages were handed back to local people who had no money to feed the children, she says. So we said, this mustn't happen here. I'd rather stand at the Christmas market in Germany together with Sadhu, she says, even if it's cold. If that means I can get 700 or 800 euros. So we're doing everything we can. Sadhu tells me that they're now trying to make the individual projects self-financing. He says that's already working well with the workshops for trainees. The wooden parasols that the apprentices are making here are sold for a profit to nearby hotels. In addition to carpenters, the project also trains car mechanics and metal workers. It's not just tsunami survivors being trained here. Like 17-year-old Shaman, many here come from very poor families who would not otherwise be able to afford to learn a trade. Without this apprenticeship, I'd have nothing, he says. I'd have to work as a day labourer and would earn virtually nothing, but now I have prospects for my future. In the afternoon, Sadhu withdraws to be alone. He spends time meditating at least once a day. He's currently preparing for a ceremony which he conducts every year for those who lost loved ones in the tsunami. Nearly everyone here in the village has lost family members. They wear white, the colour of mourning. It's a time to stop and reflect and to think over the last 10 years. After the tsunami, people were absolutely broken, says Sadhu. But now things really are better. I think we're on the right path. On December 26th, the 10th anniversary of the tsunami, Sadhu won't be in Sri Lanka. He wants to go to Germany to raise money so that help for the poorest in Sri Lanka can somehow continue 10 years after the tsunami.